Good morning, everyone. Shabbat Shalom. If you go to Jewel in West Rogers Park or you go to Binny's in West Rogers Park, they have a wine over there made under the label Pacifica. And I want you to choose the Pinot. I want you to buy one of those and try it out. Experience this wine. This Pinot by the Pacifica has won numerous prizes in LA, in Vegas, in San Francisco as one of the best Pinots in the world. And despite it being kosher, it still has been known as one of the greatest, best wines in the world. Obviously, part of that has to do with the grapes that are grown. The grapes are grown along the highlands of Washington, along the Columbia River. And the winemakers are meticulous in their production of the wine at Evans Winery. But since the owners of the winery are not Jewish, the owners of the vineyard are not Jewish, and though they are the winemakers, the process is very complex because they want it to be kosher. So we rabbis would go out there at different points of time throughout the year to make the wine under their guidance. And it was a complex process and relationship that happens every year, and I take my hats off to my fellow rabbis out there who keep ensuring that this wine is made. So how do they make the wine? So the grapes are harvested and then they crush the grapes. That's the first step, the crushing of the grapes, and then the initial fermentation. Sometimes they'll add a little bit of yeast to that initial process of the crushing of the grapes. They'll take away this, they'll destem them and put them into a special container while the wine ferments, and it's kept its juice, the grape and the peels and the pits all stay inside, and there begins this initial fermentation of the natural fermentation of the wine. After a certain period of time, when they feel it's time, then they're going to will press the grapes, and what they're going to take all that muck, we call it, I mean, like this an immense amount of juice, and then they're going to press it, and that means they're going to squeeze out all the juice and leave all of the pits and the peels and anything else, going to leave that away and pull the juice out. That is, now we have essentially it's grape juice, and then they need to get that next step going, which is going to be the next step of the fermentation. And we'll put them into these massive vats or barrels and seal them, and then every so often they'll initially add sulfites, they'll add tannins, and they'll add a bit of turmeric acid and clay just to stabilize it. And then every so often we'll go out there and we need to take a sample. We'll sample the wine and we'll give it to the winemaker, and the winemaker will do these literally, he's got a lab going on over there and test the wine, and accordingly they'll make tiny adjustments, and then we add, whether it be sulfites or sugar or tannins or sulfuric acid or clay, and eventually ultimately oak to that wine in order to get the beautiful taste of this Pinot that hopefully you'll enjoy sometime soon. The process of this winemaking is not just letting the wine sit, but it's time and it's small, tiny adjustments, scientific adjustments that the winemakers add in order to perfect that wine to its level that it needs to be. So what's this got to do with us? This week's Torah portion, the Jews walk out of Egypt, and instead of going straight into the land of Israel, the way God promised Moshe, God chooses to take the Jews not directly north to the land of Israel, but rather they go, they take this roundabout path, actually going east and then south into the Sinai desert. And they're going to be spending the next 40 years in the Sinai desert. And the real question is why? God says initially in the Torah, this week's Torah portion, God says that because they may see a war and they'll return to Egypt. Why in the world would they return to Egypt? God just make a miracle, overcome the enemy, and let the Jews go and settle in the land of Egypt. Let the Jews settle in the land of Israel. And the answer is that although it may we have taken the Jew out of Egypt, the Egypt may still be inside the Jew. The slavery mentality needs to be extricated from the Jew, and that is going to take time. It's going to take time, and it's going to take process. The Jews had physically left Egypt, but did Egypt leave the Jew? That is what's going to take the next 40 years before they can actually go back into the land of Israel and settle in the land of Israel as the Jews that are going to be the people of the chosen nation, the light unto the nation which they are destined to be. In our lives as well, time needs to happen in order for us to process certain things. In order for us to achieve a certain amount of greatness, we need to process, and it needs to happen over time with small adjustments. That is how we're going to affect great change in our own lives. You can't just go and do a major change and say, from now on, I'm never going to eat sugar, and then you don't eat sugar. It happens over time, and that is something that one needs to go through the time process. I want to share with you a quick story just for spend a minute over here. So before Steve Jobs became the famous founder or CEO of Apple, he had quit college, and he was bored. His brain was going into overmode. His brain was exploding, and he took a course on calligraphy. Fascinating. And he was fascinated by calligraphy, and ultimately what he was so fascinated was the concept of attaching words naturally and enabling words or letters to attach to each other in a natural form. And this shaped his whole perspective of how an ideal computer should work. And that ultimately is one of the foundations of the Apple world. Many of you have started off with PC, and PC, we all know, if you want to delete something, you hit delete, and then it asks you, are you sure you want to delete it? If you want to open something, you click on it, and then it says open. Do you want to open it? Are you sure you want to open? Steve Jobs wanted this whole process of everything to work together, and a strong influence of that was his calligraphy course way back when. Things that happen to us over our periods of life, over our time, we don't initially understand it, but underlying over there is the process of making a beautiful, delicious wine. I wish you all Shabbat Shalom. Think about it. Think about what is it that we're going through. There's a process that happens, and that process is creating something great within us. I wish you Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for joining. If you're available, please join us for Minyan. We have a number of people that are out of town, and we could use you to join us tomorrow morning, 9:15 at L'Chaim Center. And we have a special guest speaker. Eve is out of town. She's in Argentina. So we have Heather Razi, who's going to be speaking about this week's Torah portion. Shabbat Shalom. Join us.